Hi guys, welcome back. Just want to kick off where we left off. I think Santos was about to explain a couple of points that he's picked up on that possibly need to be looked at on this cosmic egg model. But before I continue, I also just want to thank Santos, really. Everything I've presented over the last two presentations, most of the work is stuff that I've ripped off the research Santos has done. So I've hardly done any research. I've been watching a lot of your videos, Santos, and learning off you and learning off the syncretism, and then doing my own bit of research to add on to it. But I just want to give most of that credit to you, really, and say thank you. Yep, the floor's yours.
Thanks, Martin. I really appreciate that. It's good to see that my hard work has gone to this outcome. It's great to see the influence that it has. Well, what I was thinking of with your model was that Venus should go on the inside of the sun, or where Mercury is, I'm thinking, because they are considered to be personal planets in astrology. You've got to take a lot of astrology into account. So I'm thinking astrologically here, and also the Ptolemaic model. Okay, so Ptolemy clearly says that there's 10 concentric spheres. Prima mobile is the first, then the crystalline sea, then the firmament, then time begins. Chronos, and then he has a sun, space begins. Jupiter, Mr. Expansion. Then Mars, action. Then the sun, Venus, Mercury, and the moon is the last sphere. So Venus, Mercury, and Moon have always been considered to be subsolar. I think that's the expression. I don't think that's the right expression. But anyway, I'm trying to think of. It'll come to me. So, of course, we've got the plane of the Earth, and we've got. So Moon is always first, then Mercury, then Venus. And these planets are considered to be what's called the word just won't come. So we've got the sun here, then we've got Mars, Jupiter, then Saturn. Okay, so I can see what you're doing with the moon. It's in with the sun in the second sort of Taurus. You've got them nested. You've got like nested 4 or 5 nested Taurus fields. Okay, isn't that right? 4 or 5.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So I would say, so you put the sun in the second one, yeah?
Yep.
And you put Mars and Venus in the third one.
Yes, yep.
Right. Venus,
Mercury on the inner one, the one at the center, inside us.
Yeah. And you've got rightfully Saturn and Jupiter up here. Now Saturn is 29.5 years in orbit. Moon is 29. Well, actually, let me be more specific because this is very interesting. 29.49, I believe it is. Got to check that one again. I'm going. It's late and I'm tired. 29.49, whatever that number is. This is exactly a harmonic of it, or a fractal of it.
Okay.
Days. So the Saturn and Moon thing, that's very interesting. I'll get back to that. But then you put the first vortex or nested torus field, and you put that at the center of the Mount Meru, sort of around the center part of the Earth, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's a problem because Venus's orbit is 225 days, okay? Whereas Mars is 6, 8, 7 days, which is just under 2 years. Jupiter's 12 years, of course. And the Sun, of course, is the 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So it's expressive of sort of a golden ratio, sacred geometric, ratio of these planets, right? Order. Order. So obviously the Moon goes up here with the Sun, yeah? First of all, we get Venus transits, Mercury transits, and Moon transits.
Right.
Called eclipses.
Uh-huh.
So Moon transits are called eclipses, but they are transits because the eclipses can only happen near the nodes, the North Node and the South Node. So they are eclipses. They are transits. It's a transit. The Moon is passing either in front of the Sun or behind the Sun, and the North Node is there. But three things have to come together: either Rahu and Ketu, or as we call them in Western system, North Node and South Node. They are always there, present within 4 degrees of the Sun and the Moon, either or, whether it's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, time and time again, consistently, invariably, always. So with Mercury, we can see the transits of Mercury, and they always happen in Taurus, in the middle of May in Taurus, and opposite in the middle of Scorpio, around about November 11th. So May 8th, 9th, 10th, November 8th, 9th, 10th, directly opposite. And the Venus transits happen in Gemini and opposite Sagittarius. So December 10th and Gemini, and June, say, 10th, June the 10th or 9th, I think it happened in 2012 and 2005, Venus, both transits were in Gemini, okay, around the 5th of June to the 8th of June. So, the big boys, we don't see these transits. So, you can see how these guys definitely, Mars belongs to that sphere, and Jupiter and Saturn belong to this fourth nested vortex, or there could be just straight out 7 of them, and
well, this is why, Santos, I was saying on my mod, this is why I was saying that perhaps the suns, or what I call the suns, Saturn, Mars, Apollo, they follow, they run along the actual vortex, whereas the moons, they are in between. They're in an imaginary, on an imaginary path. They're not on the actual, what is it called? The actual vortex. They're in between. So if we were to conjunct them, right? I don't know if it's on me at the moment, the screen.
Yeah, I can. Yes, it is. I can see you.
Okay. So if we were to conjunct all these planets with Polaris, like that, yeah, they would fold into each other, all the different planets. So then you'd have Mercury, Moon, Sun, or Mercury, Moon, Venus. So maybe Venus on its path is actually below the zenith of where the Sun would be, at its zenith, at its peak, if everything is conjunct. If everything was conjunct there, it would be Mercury, Moon, then Venus, then the Sun above it at the top, and then you'd have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So these ones are following that line, whereas these ones are actually in between. They're not actually following the line. They're in between the line. They're on an imaginary eclipse. Imaginary, I said that the suns and the moons behave differently. The suns are following that actual ecliptic path on the torus fields, and the moons are in the imaginary one. So there's another toroidal field that is maybe not as physical. It's more, it's transparent that they follow. So if they're all conjunct along the axis and the sun is at its zenith, then and if you pull the moon in to where the axis is, the moon would fall slightly underneath the sun. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yep, I get you. Yeah, what is the reasoning for having Venus outside of the sun? How do you...
Only because I'm trying to understand if Venus was within our toroidal field, surely we should be able to see her more clearly as we see our sun and moon. The reason why we see our sun and moon so clearly is because they're within our toroidal field. So I would imagine that anything outside is why we see them as shimmering luminaries, because we're seeing them beyond our torus field. It's being obstructed by the toroidal field. That's why they look like they're shimmering in water, those suns and moons. It's because of that. So I'm trying to understand if Venus was within our toroidal field, surely we should see her a lot clearly, the same as we see our sun and moon. And if she is, and we don't, then why don't we? If she's within our toroidal field, if she's within our atmospheres, the thermosphere or mesosphere or wherever, surely we should be able to see her a bit more clearly, more often.
Yep, I hear that. I'm just being an astrologer. I see Venus and Mercury are always near the sun. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Okay. All right, these are some famous people I've got here. Let me see if I remember who. Oh yeah, I know who this one is. Marlon Brando. Okay, Arian. I'm not going to do his. I'm just. I will one day. That's why I got these made. But you see Venus and Mercury.
Yep.
And there's the sun. They're always near the sun. Okay.
Okay.
So Mercury can never be more than 28 degrees away from the sun. So he's always. It can only be in the sign of the sun, which in this case he's not. Is in the 28th degree of Pisces, and the sun is in the 12th degree of Aries. So they're still only 14 degrees apart from each other. That Mercury can only be another 14 degrees further away from the sun. Venus, 48, okay? So let's have a look at another chart. Who we got here? Elvis Presley. There's his sun, there's Mercury, there's Venus. Again, they're always near. And look, and all the other planets, Mars is way over here, Jupiter. All right, so let's have a look at another one. Who's it? Oh, yeah, this one is... Anyway, I'll forget who it is. But, so there's the sun. There's Mercury, there's Venus. Venus is really, really, she's an evening star. As you can see, the sun has set.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so in this case, Venus is setting after the sun has set, obviously. So, but when she's here, she'll be rising in front of the sun, right, at the ascendant, right? So, but she's behind the sun now, right? So, but that's about as far as she can be, right? So this is the thing. I always see. Here's another one. There's the sun. There's Mercury, close to the sun. There's Venus, forward of the sun. In this case, Venus was rising first, because she would have been about here, and the sun would have been down about there, and then she's up here like that. There they are now. So she's forward of the sun. So, but that's about as far as you'll ever see Venus. She can only be 48 degrees away from the sun. So seeing this, what you're seeing is, as the sun just keeps going like this, on the ecliptic, right ascending, on its azimuth, you see what's happened is you've got Mercury will come along like this. Well, I'll have to go slower. Sorry. So you've got sun, going, and then Mercury will be doing this. Retrograding, retrogressing, and then Venus will be doing more like this. So start over here. Venus will be going like this. Retrogressing. So they're always. So you've got sun and Mercury will always be there, 28 degrees. Venus will always be 48. Now, that's why you've got the transits. See, so this is why Venus really has to be this side of the sun, inside the sun from our perspective.
So is it possible that maybe Venus and the sun are both orbiting along our Taurus field, in our Taurus field? Because it still doesn't explain why we don't see Venus as clearly as we should. Because now what I'm seeing by what you've just said, you've just clarified something for me there.
No, we'll see.
When you show that movement of Mercury that Mercury makes, that's because Mercury at the center, obviously, has got a shorter circuit to make. Okay, so Mercury's circuit is much shorter. Hence, you'd see that movement that you're talking about, that retrograde movement. Because, Mercury's circuit is so much shorter than any of the other rings, because it's the smallest toroidal field. Okay, it's the smallest circuit. And the moon, if the moon is just here in between, so let's say the sun is here on this toroidal field, right? I'm putting the moon literally just after the sun. Venus just after the sun, literally just behind. And maybe she's moving at a similar speed to the sun, or, picking up and dropping off with the sun. So maybe Venus, she follows the sun quite closely as she orbits around her imaginary orbit, just after our toroidal field. Not as far as Mars, who's actually on the chariot of the toroidal field on the outside. So Mars is further, whereas Venus is closer to our toroidal field than the outer toroidal field. That's how I'm. So when you were showing those movements, I saw that straight away, and that was an aha moment for me. Because if you look at it from this perspective, right, you've got Mars, who's pretty much running along this toroidal field, the outer one. Okay, we've got the sun on our toroidal field, and Venus would be close to the sun. If the sun is here, Venus is just behind the sun, closer to our Van Allen belt than the outer one. And then you've got Mercury at the center, obviously because she's at the center and his orbit is much smaller. Naturally, she would look like she's following the sun more. because there's less of a gradient for them to make up, because it's a smaller toroidal field.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'd have to sort of draw it all out and think about it and ponder it. But it's possible. I mean, no one has ever been able to nut out the heavens perfectly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're talking about it, So, but you have to thrash it out.
Yeah.
And put it on the drawing board properly. See, if the sun is doing daily circles, then that year is not actually one loop. It's 365 loops.
Yeah.
How it would work. So you'd have the North Pole, and you'd have, say, Earth is like that. All right, so there's a North Pole. I was supposed to do it. No, I didn't want to do it this way. Anyway, I'll keep going. So this is Cancer, Equator, and Capricorn. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The tropics.
Yep.
And of course, we've got Antarctica out here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now from the side, of course, what we're dealing with is, if that's the Earth, and this is the North Pole in the center,
Uh-huh.
and the Sun will be doing something like that at Cancer,
Yep.
and something like this at Capricorn,
Uh-huh.
and then something like this at the equator.
Yes.
So you've got ramping up and down of the Sun.
Yep.
But the Sun is doing 365 of these.
Uh-huh.
So Venus, so the point is Venus okay. So yeah, well, Venus does 225. So what you've got then is, you've got, say, on December 21st, the Sun hits the Tropic of Capricorn, and Australia will be down here, say, like that, and then 3 months later gets to the equator, and that'll be March 21st, the equinox. 3 months later, it gets to Cancer, June 21st. Solstice, summer solstice. And Europe is, well, it's all on, all inside there. So you've got, all right, the northern. Then on the way back down, 3 months later, that'll be September 23rd. So equinox, solstice, solstice.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Sun is out here at the Tropic of Capricorn,
Yep.
in December, and then it's over here in June at the solstice, and that's 6 months there, and that's 6 months there. So it's doing 365 of these every year, and Mercury and Jupiter and Venus
Okay.
No, okay. So Mercury and Venus.
So Mercury is at the center, at the North Pole. So Mercury is within that first ring. That's Mercury's transit in there.
Mercury is here. Sun is out here. Moon is also here too, yeah? The limit of the sun, yeah? The limit of the sun does not go out here. So if that's the Tropic of Capricorn and you're over here in Melbourne, and they say that the sun is rising south of east, right? So it's rising even more than the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator, which will be somewhere around here, actually. So that's what they're saying about that. But I mean, I mean, we're talking about electromagnetic phenomena in the fourth dimension. You know, we've got it's like the sun is a personal objective projection. You know, that is operating in laws that we just we can't really comprehend for a start, because I mean, even the quantum physicists, there's nothing that they can tell you that conclusively that is a scientific fact, because they're also telling you always that they're theorizing, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they have never concluded anything. I mean, Copernicus was theorizing about his revolution. He says, look, please don't take this as absolute fact. It's only useful for explaining certain phenomena, you know, which means from one, explaining the relationship between two observed movements in the heavens, for instance, right? So it explains that. He says it's useful for that, but it's not a true model. Same with Newton. Newton was always stressing that it's hypothetical what he's doing, and the hypothesis and the theory and what if, you know. So, but okay, well, let's get back to this then. So we've got three objects here. Mercury, always inside the tropics. He never comes out to the tropics, yeah?
Yeah.
Never comes from there to there.
No.
Okay, so Mercury's always around here. And then you've got Sun and Moon. This makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. Okay, to me, right? But to have Venus out here with Mars in the third Taurus field, nested. Did you say there were 4 or 5? Sorry.
There are 4 inner ones. What I was saying was that if that is our Taurus field, okay, and the sun is either on it or just inside the Taurus field and running along it on the spiral like that, which is why we see the sun, because it's just inside or it's on it. I'm saying Venus would be just on the other side, touching it. They're pretty much almost touching, just divided by the Taurus field. So they're quite close to one another. Okay? And then the next Taurus field is here, and this is where Mars would be, out here on the next toroidal field. So technically, Venus and Mars are in the same jurisdiction, Sun and Moon, but Venus is very close to Apollo. They're almost following the same path. They're always together because they're just on the other side of our toroidal field, and the sun is just on the other side. That's the affair that Apollo and Aphrodite are having in Greek mythology. And Mars was jealous of Aphrodite having an affair with Apollo. That's because they follow the same path. When in actual fact, Mars and Aphrodite should be together because they're the sun and moon of these outer lands together. That's how I've reconciled it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's lovely. Now, for me, I have to astrologically see how that works, you know. So,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, of course, we know with the heliocentric model, the year orbit of the sun, or, well, they say it's the Earth, of course, orbiting around the sun. So there is a one revolution, even though they say the Earth is rotating 24 hours, so 365 rotations around the Earth goes orbiting around the sun. So there is a one, you know,
Yeah.
one revolution there. Whereas we're dealing with, so June,
Yep.
September, December, and then it winds back in.
Yep.
So the sun's torus field is like a breathing, expanding, compressing from tropic to tropic. So knowing this, it's easier to fit Venus into that outer ring.
Yeah.
With Mars, because now we see that Venus is also going around daily along with the sun. Has to be.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So this 225-year a day other cycle that's going on, which we call an orbit of Venus, which it is not an orbit of Venus.
Yeah.
That must have to do with it just has to do with where Venus goes from evening to morning star. It's just she has to retrogress.
Yeah.
You know, so she advances in front of the sun 48 degrees when she's direct. Then she retrogresses and she's behind the sun 48 degrees. Then she's going direct again. And then she'll be advancing in front of the sun 48 degrees. Then she'll go stationary. Then she has to retrogress. So she's doing this in a pattern with the sun. It's like a...
almost like a pendulum.
Well, yeah, or like an epicycle,
Yeah.
I was going to say.
That's it.
Like an epicycle.
Yeah.
So she's also doing the same thing as the sun every day, but it's variable speed that she's just doing that. So as the sun's cruising along this way,
yeah,
and as you said, this is 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah. Give or take. Yeah.
So Venus is outside here, not in this part of the vortex. She's in a second nested torus field. And so what she'll be doing is she'll be advancing like this. She's going faster than the sun, then she'll go stationary. The sun's always going the same pace.
Yes.
Always marking the same time.
Yeah.
Venus will be going like that.
Yep.
And then the sun will be here and then she'll go back here. But she's not actually, well, yeah, she is physically going back. But that's cool because wherever the sun is, she will always be around the same area, you know. She'll be doing this, following the sun more or less, you know. Yeah. So yeah. Well, the other thing is
that's beautiful, Santos. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, yeah. The other thing is you say that if Venus were in our vortex, then we should see her as brilliant as the sun. I don't know about that because look at the moon. The moon's the same size as the sun, yes. I think originally, yes, they. Originally, at their I guess at the focal point where they project onto,
Yeah.
I think they're more or less all the same planets size. Because remember the pictures of the 21st of August eclipse?
Yeah.
And whatever it was that passed in front of the sun, well, actually, no, the one that was the year before, the March 20 on the equinox of 2015, that eclipse happened in conjunction with Ketu, the south node.
Right.
And you saw like these little beads of condensed water in the sky, like drops of water passing in front of the sun, causing the eclipse.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing with the August 21st eclipse.
Yeah.
You see the sun like that, and then you definitely see something covering it like that, but from other angles, people saw something like that going past the sun, and as soon as it got in the center, it created the eclipse.
Yeah.
So the sun is a source projection, a source objective projection, right? So the center of the sun is probably just it'd have to be much smaller than the body that we see. We call.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're all about that size, right? And then this expanded disk that we see glowing and that has its limit. See, like the sun for me is like a condensed rainbow, right? The sun causes the rainbow. The sun is made up of white light, which is incoherent white light, and the 7 refracted colors of the white light of the sun, which are the electromagnetic spectrum, Snow White, and the 7 dwarves. So that's just like a coiled. Well, they say it's a serpent. Yeah, it's Quetzalcoatl, the rainbow serpent, according to the Aboriginals. Well, that's the rainbow, isn't it? But it's condensed. Yeah. So this, what we see here is the sun. That's an electrical effect. Yeah, it has to be.
Absolutely.
You're putting the moon in the same as the same thing as well, like a projection, as you were saying. The moon pretty much has that same reputation as well. So you're not actually what you're seeing is not actually what is actually there. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the same with the moon, because the moon is the same diameter or circumference as the sun. So possibly Venus, if we saw her in the same context as we see the sun, it would probably appear like this as well. So you're saying, obviously, the reason why those planets are like stars, wandering stars, is because they all belong to the other 3 concentric nested torus fields that make up this big Anu, which is actually what the word is. Anu. That's what one of the words for the torus field, the original. So, and of course, this has got Uranus.
Yeah. Of course, yes.
All right. Yeah. And Uranus is the firmament. We know that.
Yeah.
Uranus had a son, and his name was Kronos.
Yes.
Kronos castrated his father Uranus. Right. Well, Kronos is temp.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's just call him what he is. Time. Right. And then time beget some children that he swallowed. Because that's what time does. Time begets children, and then they die, and you get swallowed up back out of the time matrix again. Well, then that's the son of Saturn is Jupiter, or son of Kronos in the Greek is Zeus. So that would be space, because good old Jupiter in astrology is what? Expansion, expansiveness. So you got time. So that is the Trinity, and Uranus, Anu, is this magnetic vortex. Or vortex. I was going to say firmament, but it's firmament is not as general as I would call it. Generally, it's an Anu. Multi-dimensional, electromagnetic torus body. Why I say multi-dimensional is because, well, there you've just described 4 dimensions, haven't you? Each torus is a dimension. So you'd be suggesting that Venus and Mars in that 3rd torus field, that'd be they are in another dimension. In fact, they are. That's what Ptolemy says, that these they are spiritual bodies and entirely luminous and conscious beings. So,
Wow. Well, something that I've been trying to figure out is, where does Rhea come into this? Who's Rhea in Greek mythology? What would that be?
Well, Rhea is the wife of Kronos, and the mother of Zeus, Jupiter Zeus.
Yes.
Which is Jesus, exactly who it is. And you can know this because Rhea becomes Mother Maria, and her husband Saturn, Kronos, Seth becomes Seth, father Seth, and mother Rhea. So Saturn and Rhea beget a son, Jesus. And so it's the same story. Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And again, Kronos was the the foster father, wasn't he, of Zeus, because he didn't bring him up.
Yes.
It's the same story.
So Santos, so would Rhea be the name that would Rhea be the name of the 4th toroidal field? Well, would that be the name of?
Look at the name, brother. Look at the name. Rhea is
area. Right.
She's also great.
Yeah.
She's also our mother who art great, who is great in heaven. She's also the bread, the cereals. Rhea, bread, because time and space, Saturn and area, tempo and area.
Yeah.
So Jupiter fills the same. Jupiter fills the same boots as Rhea, because Jupiter is expansion.
Yeah.
It always works like that, because what happens now is this is grandpa. This is daddy, and this is the son, and now Zeus, Jupiter, Jesus becomes, the God of gods and the savior of men in Christianity. But in Greek, he's the God of gods, right? Well, because he defeats time. He castrated his daddy, because this guy castrated his daddy, right? So how does Jupiter do that? Well, he thwarts that power out of, he was the one that thwarted being swallowed by Kronos.
That is amazing, Santos, because when I was doing the whole solar ascension thing on my model, I put Saturn as the portal in for souls. When souls are descending into the cycle of life, the first place you come into is Saturn, like we're saying, Father Time. That's when time starts. And I said on this side, feminine energies, these are the portals out. So souls ascending upwards, they go through the moon, then through Venus, then through Jupiter. Jupiter is the last one in the fourth dimension before you enter the heavens. So defeating time. Jupiter, you're defeating time. You're now leaving time. And that's where that mythology comes in. When you get into Saturn, you're now in time. You're coming into time. When you're leaving Jupiter and ascending upwards, you're now defeating time. You're back into timeless form.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
Jupiter, yeah, it's Peter and Paul. You rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
Paul is Saturn,
Yeah.
and Peter, Jupiter. You must understand this. There's this motif of Peter and Paul, and Mary, Peter, Paul, and Mary. But the Peter and Paul is Jupiter and Saturn because of this Trinity. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the beginning of everything, the origin of all things. The heavens. Uranus means heaven.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is our spiritual daddy. And then time is born of Uranus.
Uh-huh.
And so time castrates no time, essentially, or the forever now. So time is now wanting to have 3 tenses instead of 1 tense. All right, so that's the principle of time. And then because time swallows everything up, in order for things to exist without being swallowed up the instant they are born, you need the principle of Jupiter. So Jupiter is a principle. It's a universal principle.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Just as Saturn is. It's the principle of spaciousness, volume. And that's why he's associated with Vulcan. Volcanoes produce volume because they are magnetic. Magnetism is totally responsible for what we call space, volume. So Jupiter is Vulcan, volume, and he is space, as so is Rhea. You have to look at the roots of the words, and you've got to know the archetypes. It's always these two twins or trinities. It's always tightly connected to a trinity or a duality, twins. Okay? So, yeah, so one is a malefic, Saturn, greater malefic, because time, we have to defeat time, man. We've got to go into the eternal forever now, rather than being lost in the past and anxious about the future.
Yeah.
And never settled in the now. Why don't we just eliminate all that regret of the past, anxiety for the future, and discombobulation of not knowing who we are, why we are, where we are, ever in the now. We can get rid of all of that by reabsorbing these principles of time and space, because see, this all of this is frequency. Yeah, frequency is time.
Uh-huh.
It's all vibration. Yeah.
Yep.
And frequency. So you've got a sine wave, and so here you've got space, wave amplitude, and here you've got time, wavelength. This is vibration and frequency, you see. So time, Saturn's marking time, and Jupiter is making space for the time to manifest in. So they are father and son. They castrate each other. It's just like Cain kills Abel. Isaac tries to kill Esau. They're not killing each other literally, because it's not. It's talking about this. One brother has to kill the other brother. You know, positive must kill negative, otherwise it can't go back to be positive again. and they're changing natures, flipping over. Radharani and Krishna, you know, Mary and Jesus, and it's all basically just the yin and the yang. And you've got source light and force light. And so, I forget the point I was making, but anyway, I think I finished what I wanted to say. So that principle, that is the principle. So having Saturn and Jupiter on the outside ring makes a lot of sense, because Saturn is the beginning of all things. All things begin in Saturn. But then they say all things begin in Jupiter, because Jupiter is air. Well, air is hot and moist.
Yeah.
And hot and moist are the two benefic humours of Jupiter. So, whereas Saturn is cold and dry, so time, it's cold and dry, man. There's no doubt about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Space is hot and moist.
Yeah.
And those are the humours of Saturn, of the greater malefic. Whatever is dry and cold cannot grow. Plants can't grow in the dryness if they're dry, nor if they are cold. They need Jupiter, which is the two good humours, which are heat and moisture, right? So, and that you see how heat creates expansion, whereas coldness contracts.
So is that also reminiscent of the toroidal fields breathing in and out, creating the ages? So when
Yep.
the torus fields are outwards, that is the expansion, is it, as you're saying? And then when they come back in, and we're in the dark age of consciousness, this is when Saturn is ruling, cold and dry time.
Yeah,
So
well,
during the
Saturn
golden ages, Jupiter is king. Jupiter is the one ruling the energy. And during the darker ages of consciousness, when all the toroidal fields have closed everything in, this is when Saturn is ruling.
Yeah. Saturn is the contracting in breath,
Yep.
and Jupiter is the expanding out breath. And the Taurus field is always doing this. Hence, you have the tides
Yep.
of the ocean. You have the earth heaving and then resting and heaving. The earth is always. I learnt this when I was selling a house, new home salesman. I did that for 4 years. And you had to go out and do testing the ground, the soil, the quality of the soil. Was it A soil? Was it B? And all different grades of soil to build on. So to build a new, how much to put in the foundations. Yeah. And but I learnt about this heaving. You see,
Yeah.
certain soils heave a lot in the summer and in the summer.
Yeah.
In the winter with all the moisture. And then in the summer, they withdraw. And so the house can get cracked. It can crack with certain kind of soils. So this is the breath. Everything is breathing, you see. And Saturn is the principle of everything coming back to oneness and contracting. Hence, Saturn is strict, stern, disciplined, has boundaries, clear boundaries. Right, whereas Jupiter is expansive, loose, and the opposite. So it's always Peter and Paul.
So right now, as we speak, as we say, we're on the upward cycle of consciousness. Jupiter is on her way to taking over from Saturn, basically.
Yep.
That's a good way to put it, right?
Well, Jupiter's never going to defeat Saturn, or vice versa.
Yeah, they work in tandem, obviously, breathing in and out, like you're saying.
Yep.
But now the breath is going outward, isn't it? Whereas we were breathing inward consciously, we're now breathing outward consciously. We're now expanding, heading towards the golden age, so to speak, of openness, of no toroidal fields, we're all one, the whole Bhumandala, all the worlds, we're all connected, we're all one, open.
Yep. So So Saturn was the ruler of the golden ages, not Jupiter. Jupiter caused all the 4 seasons, according to Virgil. Yeah.
So it's the other way around.
No, it's correct how you had it. I have to add this to it because you have to understand that what you said is correct. Yes, but in another modality, it's the other way around. Depends on which modality. Okay, so yeah, Saturn. When Jupiter castrated Saturn, the golden age ceased and the 4 seasons began. Okay, because that expansion of Jupiter unbalanced the ages. Okay, but in another modality, Jupiter is the finer one. He is the greater benefic and Saturn is the greater malefic. So Jupiter is the one that you go to St. Peter at the pearly gates. See, if you look at the, it's interesting, I'm going to do a show on this. This is the Dendera stone of Egypt.
Okay.
Now, on here, you'll have, there are all the 48 original constellations, starting at Aries, just as I do all my maps, all my charts, Cancer, Libra, there's the scales. You can see the green scales there. All the green ones in here.
Yep.
Okay, all these green ones. So there's Libra, right there where I have my Libra always. Virgo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. Now, they've got all of these deacons, 36 deacons. So I'm going to do a presentation on this showing that this was around for thousands and thousands of years, and all these signs are exactly the same as the modern ones today. No difference at all. Not a bit of difference. The only discrepancy is a couple of the deacons of Libra. I can't seem to find them on the Dendera stone, but all the rest, they're all there, all right, intact. So this absolutely smashes these guys who say that the Greeks added Libra 2,000 years ago. Well, this is more than 5,000 years old, and there's Libra, you know, and certain deacons and certain things were added. Well, this is the oldest, and it's the same. It's exactly the same as the Ptolemy system. Ptolemy actually gives us a list of the 48 constellations, the 36 extra zodiacal deacons, and the 12 zodiacal. Now, I forget why I pulled this out. I was going to say something. Can you bring me back to the subject? Why did I come to this?
Saturn and Jupiter, we were explaining the ages. We were saying that Jupiter was expansive, of course, and Saturn was restricting. But I must say, Martin, the restriction is also sometimes needed in the sense of how you understand Saturn in the sense, because as I said, he gets a lot of bad vision and, of course, everyone, you know, it's a Satan thing and everything else, blah, blah, blah. But he is also a needed and can also be a gift in many ways if you actually understand sometimes what these planets are representing.
Yeah.
And that trinity there that Sandos was pointing out, just the Jupiter and the Saturn, the two planets together, man, that's like the mother lode of all astrotheology, that those two together, they really do sing in so many areas.
When you understand that, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. Now, I remember why I pulled this out. At the bottom here, the Tropic of Cancer, Saturn rules in winter. He rules Capricorn and Aquarius. So he's always down the bottom, down in hell, where Satan is supposed to be, always here, ruling these 60 degrees of the ecliptic, from the Tropic of Capricorn all the way to the 20th of February, from the 21st of December, that there. And here, this is where all the good stuff happens in Sagittarius, who is ruled by Jupiter. So you see, Sagittarius and Jupiter, this is the ninth sign, the ninth heaven. And so Jupiter is Peter, Saint Peter, at the pearly gates. So when you actually, all the ancients and the Neoplatonists said that the souls incarnate at the Tropic of Cancer, come through into the solar system, at the Tropic of Cancer, and that's where the moon rules, and leave at the rings of Saturn at the Tropic of Capricorn. But just before Saturn gets his rulership here in Capricorn and Aquarius, Saint Peter, Jupiter, is here in heaven at the pearly gates. This is where you go to the ninth heaven, to Jupiter's sign. And the deacons, interesting that the deacons of Sagittarius, one of them's called the harp, lyra, with Vega in it. Lyra is, in other words, a guitar.
Yeah.
So what do you see people doing at the gates of near the pearly gates in heaven? You see them playing a harp.
Yeah.
And then there's another deacon called Ara, which is an altar. And it's called the censer, or the incense holder or vessel. And this is where Zeus, Jupiter, offered incense on the altar to the gods just before he was going to defeat Kronos, his father, and the Titans. So the Olympians, they offered at the altar, Ara, in heaven, Zeus, Jupiter, before he defeated, Jesus. I like that, Juice. You worship a juice, you're Jesus. So you see, here we have all the themes. Sagittarius. This is also in astrotheology. Sagittarius is the Garden of Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives, because Sagittarius rules the back of your head here, where you have two olives. And this is the Mount of Olives because it's high up in your body, you see. So and Draco is the third deacon of Sagittarius, and Draco is the dragon or the devil. And what does Jesus encounter in the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives? The devil.
Devil, yeah.
You see, so all of these deacons and the whole story of Sagittarius and the rulership of Jupiter, just before the sun hits the Tropic of Capricorn, where Saturn begins on the 21st of December, just before that is where all the heavenly action occurs. And that's what the ancients say, that through the arrow of the Sagittarian, you send your wishes and you send your hopes, and you are saved by that deliverer. He is the delivering sign. It's called the delivering sign. So when you get to know all this, I've got so much information that I'm going to take out of this, showing that what they're describing here is the 48 constellations. They are the 48 organs in your body. Okay? Aries is the cerebrum, right?
Wow.
Leo is the heart. So they're describing, explaining, and modeling field mechanics. It's Taurus field energy. They're describing it. They're modeling how it works. And they're telling you where all the positions of the 36 deacons are indicating what archetypal energies are found as the vortex does its cycles. And so in every wave and in every field, when energy is traveling through the field, it does this. This is what the Egyptians are telling us here. They didn't make the ecliptic and the constellations, and they didn't design any of this. This is how things work. This is like a blueprint of things that how energy actually works. This is the
original quantum mechanics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only way to model, because what you're doing, see, with your model, you've got 4 nested torus fields. Well, have a look at an atom. Don't they have different rows of electrons? You've got the first one, the shell. Yeah, how many shells do they have? 10? Or they have about 4 shells, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, they tell you that an atom, right? Let's say carbon.
It's just about to cut off. We're running out of time. About 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Might have to reloop.
It's up to you. Do we need to keep going?
No, can we schedule another time? Because I've got to work in 15 minutes.
Yes, yes.